evening. My name is Eileen Beaker. I'm the director of the Career Center, and I want to welcome you here to our Careers for Animal Lovers Career Interest Panel. I am joined by Dr. Ann Weber, who is a professor in our psychology department, and she is serving as a co-moderator with me. We're also joined by several panel members who have devoted their lives to working with animals, and they have volunteered their time to educate you about how their careers have evolved and how they were able to follow their passion and love of animals and turn them into careers. So the plan for this evening will be for the next hour, Ann and I will ask the panelists questions, so you'll be able to get to know them better and be more aware of how their careers evolved. And then we'll have time for a question and answer period. And then from there, we'll go on to networking one-on-one with the panelists. So definitely think about questions that you may want to ask at the end of the program. Okay, so we ready? So to begin the journey, I would love for the panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about how your careers have evolved and what you're doing now in your work. And we can start with Matthew.
Yeah, I'll go first. My name is Matt Christian, and I work for the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, Division of Conservation Education, and I'm stationed at the Pisgah Center for Wildlife Education. I'm an education specialist, a whole lot of words there. What else do you want to know?
Just what you do, your history, how you ended up doing this work.
To be honest with you, let's see. I guess it started when I was about 13, 12, I don't know, somewhere around there. I've always had grown up in more of a rural backdrop. That's a fun word, by the way. And my father took me backpacking and took me hunting, fishing. I spent a majority of my childhood muddy. And as I grew up, I remember, actually, this is a pivotal moment.
Pivotal moment.
Say it right there.
Pivotal.
There you go. That's what she said. But anyway, it's a big moment in my life. It was actually a camping trip, backpacking trip up at Grandfather Mountain. And this guy came down the trail and he said, "Let me see your hiking permit." And, we gave him our hiking permit. He said, "Have a good day." And off he went. And I turned to my father and said, "That's a great job." I said, "The guy just gets paid to hike, check hiking permits? That's a great job." And so anyway, I went to Appalachian State, which is right down the road from Grandfather Mountain. And I remember my first year at Appalachian State. How many of you guys pretty much like where you are right now over at UNCA? You never want to go home again? Is anyone like that? I never wanted to go home again. I decided I'd never go home again. So when summertime came around and my roommates left, I decided I'd just stay put. And so, wouldn't you know it, I got a job as a backcountry ranger at Grandfather Mountain.
Cool.
And pretty much held that all through college. And when I was going through college, I was in the, I guess it was college education. I was going to be a school teacher. Then I realized there was like 19, 18-year-old chicks that looked like my third grade teacher already. They had the denim smocks on and the apple thing there, and they were kind of creeping me out. They wanted to put, what do they call those things? The billboards or the bulletin boards up everywhere. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I got to get out of here. But another big aspect of my life was just teachers that I interacted with. And I had this one history teacher. He gave like the impossible final exams. It's like a 500-question final exam, and he'd always say, either you know it or you don't, right? It's like you have no time to wonder about the question. And but anyway, he pushed us, and I enjoyed the way he taught. I enjoyed his enthusiasm. I enjoyed his connection with the kids. So there we are. I've got two things going on. I have a love for the outdoors was instilled in me through my family, and at the same time, I had this need to make a connection. And being the ranger at Grandfather Mountain, they have us write citations, but they're not like really citations. They just go in a computer database, and if you ever try to go to Grandfather Mountain, they say, "Oh, we've got you on our computer file for mountain climbing in a closed area." So they didn't really hold any real weight. It was now it's a state park, but then it was private industry. But anyway, I kept thinking about it. It's like, do I really want to go work for state parks where I'm going to spend 95% of my time writing citations for stuff that looks like a lot of fun to me and that I would absolutely do? Or, is there another avenue where I can have my love for the outdoors and, again, try to find that connection that my high school history teacher had with me with other kids? And the Wildlife Resources Commission, at the time that I graduated, actually about a year after I graduated, had this place called the Pisgah Center for Wildlife Education. It was located in Brevard. It's one of my many stomping grounds when I was in college, when I was living that nomadic life of being in college. And I said, that's where I want to go. Now, the trick is, it's a hard job to get. So what I basically did was I sold my soul to the devil. And that means that I found a local commissioner, struck up somewhat of a relationship. I talked to the division chief for the Division of Conservation Education, and I hounded the staff at the Pisgah Center. I think I went and visited the site twice before they finally gave me an interview. And luckily, sometimes it's just place and time and everything coming together. I got the job. So it's fantastic. And that is, basically my job is to educate the public. You could call me a propaganda specialist, I don't know. But I basically convey the message of the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission to the itty-bittiest kids, like preschool, all the way up to your age and some college professors. So it's a really neat opportunity for me to share my love for the outdoors and establish a connection daily. So I think that's kind of cool.
Great. Thanks, Matthew.
Yep.
Jade. And Jade is also UNC Asheville alumna. So welcome home.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me on this panel. My name is Jade Frank. I'm the volunteer coordinator for a nonprofit organization here in Asheville called Pause with a Purpose. And I actually did an internship as part of my course of study in health and wellness with Pause with a Purpose in 2007, and that's how I got started in pet therapy. Before that, I was raised on a horse farm, worked with dogs and cats and all kinds of wildlife, trying to, get to know animals better and care for them. Always finding injured animals or working with our own pets had a great impact on me, and I didn't even know it was a possibility for me to work in a field with animals, specifically around the human-animal bond, until I did my internship here. I thought about being a veterinarian. I realized that I just am such a heartfelt person that I probably would not be the strongest veterinarian, and therefore not a good person to work with my clients. I would probably be as broken up as they were about a possible loss or illness of an animal. I thought about working with horses, being a horse trainer or horseback rider, and I found there were different elements of that I just wasn't very competitive, and that's something you kind of want to do in horse training and competing. And when I did my internship, it was like a door opening. I realized that this is a brand new field. Pet therapy and the animal-human bond is something that is just now breaking through, using animals in psychology, using animals in hospitals, schools, prisons, all kinds of different ways to really present the magnificence of what it is to work with animals is amazing. And I actually became a registered pet therapy team with a dog, and during my internship I actually brought her to this very room for the internship fair as my final project. I have since also registered with my other dog. His name is Bam Bam. He's a Pembroke Welsh Corgi, and we actually went just this morning and read with 3 first graders who are working on improving their reading skills. And he's a very energetic dog, so for him to listen to stories for an hour is very good for him, and he had a great time. I really enjoy my job more than anything in the world. I tell people I think I have one of the best jobs in the world. I can't believe that I have it. This field is so small right now. There are only a handful of positions with nonprofits like Paws with a Purpose to work in a paid position as volunteer coordinator or facilitator of some sort. So I feel extremely fortunate and blessed to be where I'm at. I stayed with Paws with a Purpose as a volunteer following my internship, and was actually, the volunteer coordinator position became available last September, and I got the email the night before, 9 o'clock, 8 a.m. the next day. I'd sent in my resume and letter of intent. I kept my fingers crossed and thought about nothing else for about a month, and then I got the word that I had the job. And I've been ecstatic ever since. I just came upon my 1-year anniversary of being volunteer coordinator, and it still feels like it's the first or second day. It's so wonderful. In my job, I get to experience so many fantastic things. I work with amazing people who all have a very similar goal of imparting this animal-human bond and healing to people. I get to experience that either with my own dog or with my volunteers and their dogs. And it absolutely will move you beyond any limits that you've ever understood, and really touches your soul to see that and to experience that. I'm trying to think of what else. I love my job. I guess some of the things, let me think. I think that's good for
a good
now.
beginning.
Yeah, that's a good beginning. I love my job. Go Paws with a Purpose.
Kendall is with Horse Sense. So you can tell us about your career.
Sure. So my name's Kendall Smith, and I am an equine-assisted psychotherapist, and I work with Horse Sense of the Carolinas, and I've been there for about 3 years. So for me, what I knew when I was pretty young, like 12 years old, was that I wanted to be a therapist and that I wanted to work with people. And I knew I didn't want to do that in an office. I thought that was just, I didn't like it. I didn't feel comfortable. It didn't feel good to me. And it felt really limiting and inhibiting to be in an office. So I didn't understand how traditional therapy got to be where it was, because it just didn't seem natural to me to try and get somebody to open up to you in this little box of an office space. So that's what I knew I wanted to do, and I always loved animals, but I grew up in the city right outside of Washington, D.C., so I did not have the farm life that I would have liked. I was very much growing up on the metro girl. So when I went away to school, and I went to a school in a very rural area, and then I went out to Colorado and I worked on a ranch as a wrangler for a summer. And after that, I was kind of like, okay, whatever I'm going to do, it has to involve shoveling and being near horses and doing some kind of manual labor. So I volunteered a lot at horse rescues and at therapeutic riding centers, and I went on, and got my master's in counseling. I got my master's in wilderness therapy, and an emphasis there was on equine-assisted psychotherapy. So through a lot of different positions, I ended up wanting to move to Asheville specifically to work at Horse Sense, and they didn't have any open positions at that time. So I moved here to intern there, which a lot of people thought was a little bit crazy because it was a Saturday internship, and I was moving to a city without a job to do an unpaid internship on Saturdays. But I got a job, and I was working as a therapist at a therapeutic wilderness boarding school, and then interning on the weekends with Horse Sense. And eventually I managed to change roles, and I worked as an equine specialist at Horse Sense, and then as a therapist, and now I'm in charge of all the clinical services there. So what we do is really different, and it's also still very much a fledgling field. And I think that more and more people are recognizing the value of horses in a therapy setting. It's something that the military is starting to recognize as an option for returning veterans who really don't want to be in an office and sit down and have a lot of trauma issues. Horses are incredibly sentient creatures, so they feel everything around them. They are designed that way. That's what's kept them alive so long, is that they're aware of their environment more so than we are, because they're prey animals and we're predator. So in order to establish a relationship with a horse, you have to get over that predator-prey thing. And my belief is that most people that come to therapy, some piece of what they want to work on has to do with relationships. So by being in relationship with a horse, they're working on some part of whatever issue has brought them there. We also do things at Horse Sense. We do team building. We work with corporations. we do like personal growth and development. So we're working with people who don't necessarily have any kind of mental illness, but are just trying to figure things out and decide what they want to do next in their lives, or maybe just want to de-stress. That's a huge piece of what we do, is stress management. So I think that's it for now. I really love my job too.
It's obvious. Kendall? Yes. And then Joelle is also a returning UNC Asheville alumna. So welcome home as well.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Joelle Warren. I'm the Vice President of Brother Wolf Animal Rescue. I'm also the General Shelter Operations Manager. I got involved with animals. Of course, I've always been an animal lover, but while I was a student at UNCA, I also had a young child. I started apprenticing in a pet store grooming shop with to groom dogs. I actually washed her dogs while she did all the work, and I did that for about a year while I was finishing up things and learned how to groom dogs, became a groomer. Couldn't really find a job I liked after graduation, so I just continued in the grooming field, worked at a vet's office, got really more interested in animals. And then when you're in that field for a while, of course, you get stray dogs brought to you all the time. There's always somebody or actually I think that I'm a stray dog magnet as well. They just found me all the time. So I decided I tossed around a few things. I opened up my own grooming shop. Then I had space to foster animals there, so I started fostering animals there. I worked with different organizations in Asheville. It just wasn't the right fit for me, so I opened up my own rescue, and it was Pet Soup Rescue. So I did it all pretty much by myself for a few years, and then of course the burnout sets in, and that's when I met Denise with Brother Wolf Animal Rescue, and we just decided to pool our efforts, and a little over a year ago, we opened up our shelter. It's the first no-kill shelter here in Western North Carolina, and it's been a lot of hard work, but it's wonderful. I mean, we get to help animals every day. I still groom on occasion because I've been grooming for 15 years, and I have those little old ladies that will refuse to let me go and will have me grooming their poodles forever. But mainly I do operate, I'm just the director there, and we do intake of stray dogs and cats, behavior assessments of these dogs that we do take in. We are a limited intake facility, so we are unlike the Asheville Humane Society, who has to take in everything. So we are, it allows us to be a no-kill facility to actually be able to, I don't want to say pick and choose. It's not about picking and choosing the cute dogs. It's about the ones that we know that we can adopt out successfully in our community. We take dogs. We take the pit bulls, the hound dogs. We take everything as long as they don't try to bite me in the face upon introduction or want to kill every dog that walks by. I can work with any behavior issues, but they have to be able to be placed back out in the community, and it's not their fault, but it's just what we have to do. So every day I get to meet new dogs. I take care of the dogs at the shelter. We have about 40 to 50 dogs at all times living at the shelter. Also foster dogs at my house. We also have about 20 cats at our shelter, but the majority of our cats that are in foster homes, we have over 100, but only about 20 at the shelter. So my day-to-day life is up early, taking dogs to get fixed at the spay and neuter clinic. I usually don't get home until dark. I'm lucky that I do have a lot of dogs that get to come to work with me every day, so that helps. It's long hours, but it's very rewarding work.
And Joelle is a reflection of the entrepreneurial spirit at UNC Asheville. We typically have up to 5% of each graduating class for the past 5 years doing freelance and independent entrepreneurial work. So thank you for sharing your story. And Allison is also with us.
Hello. Is that loud enough? Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, guys. I'm Allison Ballantyne. I am the animal curator of the Western North Carolina Nature Center. And I'd say beginning, just like everybody here, I absolutely loved animals as a child. I was very, very shy, and so animals really were my friends. I was like the kid sitting in the garden with my hand like this, waiting for a butterfly to land on it. I also collected stray dogs. My dad would tell me every morning in the summer, don't feed the dogs. And as soon as he left, I was like grabbing bowls and going outside and collecting stray dogs. I got my first horse when I was 10. My parents are from New Jersey. They said, they gave me every reason in the book why I shouldn't have a horse. And finally, they decided that they'd put me off by telling me how expensive they were and that I would need to save up a lot of money to get a horse, and sent me on my way. And I proceeded to save up $500 when I was 10 and went to my dad and said, I have the money now. Can I get a horse? And he just like went ashen. And, and he's like, okay. So I started in horses then. I think originally, like a lot of people that love animals, I wanted to be a veterinarian. That carried me through Chemistry 101, and I just realized that the hard sciences really weren't my bag. Around the same time, I had a wonderful anthropology professor, and this was at a small school in Savannah, Georgia, and she really turned me on to primatology and human evolution, and I just took every class that she offered and really kind of found a love in anthropology and sort of behavior, like human behavior and primate behavior, and decided I wanted to be Jane Goodall. So I graduated with a degree in anthropology from the University of Georgia, where I transferred, and got out. Kind of didn't know how to become Jane Goodall. Knew I didn't want to go back for a master's anytime soon. So I just started volunteering and trying to take any opportunity I could to work with wildlife and especially primates. During college, I interned at a small nature facility similar to the one I work at now. Got some good experience. I begged and borrowed and got to take a trip to Africa where we were studying 7 species of endangered monkeys and also sea turtles. And that was pretty much a pivotal point in my life. It was just amazing in so many ways, but really found that, that field conservation was really exciting, and kind of being on the front lines of conservation was pretty neat. I had always done the sort of domestic husbandry of animals and loved that, but this was kind of exploring something different for me. I went on and did another sea turtle project in the Caribbean for about 8 months, which was terrible, terrible, terrible. And then got married and kind of settled down, and decided that working at a zoo type facility was really a great way to meld my two interests. A wise person once told me that animal lovers have to make a decision pretty early on, and he said there's 2 types. There's the ones that need to have that everyday bond, that looking in their eyes, touching, feeling, having a relationship, and then there's those that are okay with appreciating from a distance and working to protect their habitat, and just, you know, appreciating that they're wild and that's enough. And I haven't figured out which one I am yet. I just can't decide. So a zoo type atmosphere is really perfect for me because at the Nature Center we're involved with red wolf breeding. We're part of a national program that has brought the red wolf from 14 individuals to about 280 and actually released some back into the wild. So we are kind of doing that frontline conservation, but at the same time I sort of I get my fix, like looking in their eyes and those that are socialized, getting to handle them and be around them. And so it's just a really great meld for me. And I think that's it for now.
Good, good. Allison and Jade and Kendall, you talked about your educational background. What about Matt and Joelle? What were your majors? Or can you speak to like credentials to actually enter the career fields that you're in?
Like, oh yeah. Mine is experiential education, or actually it's recreation management with concentration and experiential education, and with a minor in geography and planning.
Okay.
So how does it relate to my job? The education aspect, obviously, plays a major factor in the Division of Conservation Education. Basically, we look at 2 things, either your education or your biology of some sort. So.
Good. And Jade was health and wellness. Allison was anthropology. You went on for your counseling degree, right, Kendall?
A
What was
bachelor's was in psychology.
in psychology.
Yes.
Okay.
Since then, I've become a certified dog trainer through the Animal Behavior College. I also have several certifications for just animal behavior, dog behavior work, just things like that. So just to continued education. I've been to Best Friends Animal Sanctuary in Utah several times, taken
Okay.
certification classes there. We also have a really great trainer in Western North Carolina, Kim Brophy. She also teaches classes at AB Tech. It's just general or just different certification classes, and I've taken her classes, and I apprenticed under a few other trainers. Basically, it's just to absorb any dog behavior information that I can get. That's just my passion, is the behavior and trying to fix some behaviors to make dogs more able to stay in the home, so more people don't have to like turn over their pets. Or like when we adopt dogs out, I want to be a behavioral consultant to them to like get them over some of those behaviors that drive people crazy at first, you know, chewing and barking and stuff like that.
So there's lots of specialized trainings outside of a graduate degree. So I think, Kendall, you mentioned you were taking specialized training as well.
Yeah, so there's several different kind of umbrella organizations for equine assisted psychotherapy, and Horse Sense belongs to EGALA, which is the Equine Assisted Growth and Learning Association. So I had to go through their training to be certified as an EGALA facilitator. That's one of them. And then there's things that you have to do if you are going to be a therapist. You have to, do the state regulations so that I'm a licensed professional counselor. That's my license.
Good, excellent. Thank you. Anne, did you have a question?
Yeah, we've got this fantasy list of questions to ask you, and you're hitting on all of them, which
You are.
makes our job
Perfect.
so much easier. So many of you, in fact, I think each of you has mentioned at some point that you had a moment or an inspiration or realization and a passion, which is really necessary to get you through, because it isn't all, every day, this is great, this is wonderful, plus I get paid so well. There are moments of inspiration, and then there are days of work and nights of exhaustion and weeks and paperwork. And I'm wondering if you can sort of give a sort of capsule description, each of you, of like what a given day might be like, so that the students here can get a sense of, okay, like if I were to go in this direction in 5 years or so, I'd get up in the morning and I'd do this, and if you can incorporate into a little bit of, do you ever have moments where you go, boy, I am so glad I know how to fill in the blank? Whether it's something that you learned formally or informally or figured out on your own. What's a day, what's a week like, and what do you know that gets you through that? Do you want to start on this end? Shall we start on this end, Joelle?
A day so I mentioned before, it's up early, got to tend to all the dogs that I have, all my rescues. Then I usually have some sort of errand that I have to run, taking dogs to the spay and neuter clinic or other vet appointments to get their heartworm treatment or something else, and I go back to the shelter. I do have a shelter manager now, since we do have 40 to 50 dogs, who gets there at 6 a.m. I'm lucky now. I don't have to get there till 8:30 or 9. So I go to her to check on the health of all the animals. We have, puppies from 6 weeks old to senior dogs. In a shelter environment, there's, of course, disease. We take dogs from other shelters in Western North Carolina as well. And then when they go to the Humane Alliance Spay and Neuter Clinic, they're actually in contact with a lot of other dogs. So they're always bringing back kennel cough. Kennel cough is the main disease that we see the most of. It's just kind of like a common cold or the flu that just gets passed around. So we have to check on the health of the dogs, because some dogs, it can hit them really hard and they can just crash and get a fever. So we also can administer our own medications at the shelter, so I have to check on everybody's antibiotics. Some days there are dogs that need IV fluids I'll have to administer. I'm kind of a vet tech as well, even though I have no professional training as a vet tech. And so I have to check on the health. Then I have to manage the staff, who's here, who's called in sick, who's doing this. Then somebody tells me, like, there's a cat acting weird in the cat room, so I have to go assess the cat. see what's going on there. Then you have to talk to the 50 people that come in your shelter that day. Some great volunteers that are wanting to help, some that have found stray animals, some who accidentally had a litter of puppies that they want us to take when we're so full. That's where I think my psychology degree comes in, is I talk to a lot of people on a daily basis. You get into this because, you love the animals and you have a passion for helping the animals, but it turns out that we help a lot of people as well, more people than I thought. Then you have dogs that come in from other shelters that have been scheduled. We have a waiting list with like 30 dogs on our waiting list. Those get scheduled to come in during the week. So when those dogs come in, we have to do a complete medical evaluation and intake and a behavioral assessment, which I'm pretty much in charge of that too, which the dogs have to have their heartworm tests, their initial vaccines. If they have fleas, they need flea treatments. We have to check their ears and just to make sure they're healthy. If they're not, then they get scheduled for a vet appointment. But we do have a lot of the antibiotics that we can go ahead and give if they need some meds. Then the behavior assessment, we just, on a lot of the dogs, we've met the dogs on the waiting list before. Some of the shelter dogs we haven't. So I just have to be able to touch them all over, like their feet and their tail, and see if they'll let me look in their mouth. I mean, if they give me weird signals this time, I mean, it's fine. Of course, they're stressed. I don't give them a life or death sentence because of this, but it's just information that we have to know upon intake. So I get those all done. And then there's probably 25 phone calls and emails to answer. I also have children, so I try to get home at least by 7. A lot of times my child, who is now 11, and my 15-year-old, they grew up in the shelter environment. She comes to, my son's 15 now, so he can do more of his own after-school thing. But my daughter, she comes to the shelter almost every day and hangs out, helps out. The child is very skilled at her dog wrangling skills. So then usually I get to leave, maybe be home or leave about 7 or 7:30, and then go home and do all my dog stuff again, then answer some more emails or maybe read an article from a dog behavior magazine or something, and then maybe go to bed if I can. So it's a long day.
We're inspired. We're jumping up.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
Kendall?
Okay. Something that I didn't mention about Horse Sense that I think is important is that the premise of Horse Sense was to pair rescued horses with people who were looking for something. So the majority of our horses can't be ridden, and we don't do riding at the farm. And these are horses that Shannon and Richard, who own the farm, would get a call and say, either you're going to take this horse or it's going to go to the slaughterhouse. Horses that had been neglected or abused by their owners, especially with our current economic experience, a lot of people are just turning their horses loose into the woods and things like that because horses are expensive. So Horse Sense is a lot about, it started as a rescue program and then evolved into being mental health and being personal growth and development and team building and all those things. So I felt like that was important. And we have a lower barn of horses that aren't ready to be with people yet, so they're still in rehab. One of them was attacked by a cougar. Another one had an abusive owner. And then we have the rest of our herd. We have 18 horses, and the rest of the herd that is trained and able to be with people. So my day, I get up in the morning and I walk my dog and then do my morning routine, which isn't very interesting. And then we go to work, which is really nice. I get to bring my dog to work. He doesn't get to be free on the farm, but he comes to work with me every day, which is excellent. And then my day will consist of seeing clients, so either seeing couples, families, or individuals that have either been self-referred, they're struggling with something and they want to come in and work on it like a typical outpatient mental health experience, anybody who's ever seen a therapist, but we're with horses. Or I work with the Changing Together Project, which is a gang violence prevention program, and we work with people who have recently been released from prison. Or I work with adjudicated youth who are in a detention center, things like that. I might do a team building, or I might have a substance abuse teen group or something like that. So my day is divided between being up on the farm with horses, leading a group or facilitating a therapy session, and then doing paperwork in the office, writing up all my clinical notes, doing all my collateral calls to talk to people's schools and all the other folks that are involved in that kind of mental health experience. Emails, faxing things, trying to create programming and develop curriculums for equine-assisted psychotherapy and things like that. Trying to think about what else I do during the day. I don't get to do as much. I mean, I'll catch horses when they're out, but because I'm no longer the equine specialist, I don't get to do as much hands-on horse stuff, which I really miss. And it's hard not to do that every day because that's what I was doing every day as the equine specialist, which, to be an equine specialist, you need a history with horses, but you don't have to have any kind of mental health experience. And that is then you're always going out to get the horses. You're the one who has your eyes on them every day. You're cleaning stalls. You're checking on the herd dynamics, making sure everyone's getting along well enough, things like that. So I miss that part of that job. I think that's it.
Horse Sense also typically comes to campus in the spring at UNC Asheville. We have an event called Life is Calling, What is Your Intention? And it's a series of experiential programs to get you centered in what you really want. And they typically bring a couple horses to campus and work with our students and engage them in working with the horses and leadership and mirroring, etc.
If I may just mention that they frequently have the horses up in the upper quad outside of Carmichael Hall, and I teach in Carmichael, and once a student sees a horse through a classroom window, I've lost him.
I get more students at the horse event than I do the job fairs at UNC.
Yeah, that was great this year. It was really great. I think one thing to mention is that some of my days are really, really hectic and very, very long. And over the summer, I was working really long hours, really long days that sound a little bit more like your days that are long. But part of what I'm trying to do and help people do is be aware of self-care and of burning out and how to incorporate into every day a way to have balance so that you're doing something that even if your work is what you love and is what gives you inspiration, you still need to have something else that's just for you. So I think that's another piece.
It's very important.
Jade.
All right, so a typical day for me, I'm in an interesting kind of position. Pause with a Purpose does not have a central location. We don't currently have a building or office that we can call our own. So myself and the rest of our administrative staff basically work from our own spaces. So I'll get up in the morning, walk my dogs, or let them out in the yard. I usually check email by 7 a.m. because I get a lot of emails. We have about 91 volunteers and 77 dogs. So a lot of those people usually are emailing me. Different people who are interested in pet therapy are emailing me. And I have to say, part of it being working from home, I guess, is that I'm worried about the welfare of my volunteers 24/7. If I'm not in town, I'm still worried about the welfare of my volunteers and how they're doing, because we have visits every day of the week. We're in so many different places that I want to be able to be there for them. So even though I'm trying to work on the self-care part of it, because it's like, I don't know, it's the most enjoyable thing to do my job, I still have to take time for myself. But still, it's always in the forefront. I usually check my emails about twice a week. I have an 8 a.m. meeting with our executive director, who's also the pet therapy coordinator at Mission Hospital, only the fourth pet therapy position in a hospital in the United States. And she was brought on there last year in that position. So we meet about twice a week for about 2.5 hours. You wouldn't believe it flies by. We have so much to talk about and so much to do. They're some of the shortest meetings I've ever had, even though they're some of the longest. So we usually are working on organizing the volunteers, developing our fundraising events. One of the things that I'm constantly having to keep track of are our rabies and certifications, because if we had an incident occur or an audit of some kind, say if we were visiting at the hospital, we have to have that documentation at all times. And I also have to keep a schedule of all of our volunteers and where they're visiting for the programs that I coordinate, as well as the ones that Pam coordinates at the hospital, and that our president, Norma Palmer, coordinates at the schools at all times, just to know where everybody is and what they're doing. After our meetings, I'll usually either go on a pet therapy visit myself with my dog, or I will go on a site visit and observe a team visiting with a population, depending on where they are. Or I may do what's called leashless volunteering. And as a volunteer, I volunteer both with my dog and without my dog. So for instance, when we come here to UNC Asheville, if I don't bring my dog, then I'm there to be a support to the teams that are here with their dogs that visit just down across from the cafe. And I'm a person who's without a dog and therefore can focus on things aside from the dog. One of the biggest things in handling when you're doing pet therapy is you need to be focused on the interactions between the people around you and your dog, and things like questions about how to get involved with pet therapy, water bowls, water for the dogs, all different sorts of things that come up, especially if you're visiting with children or you're doing things in a hectic area. A leashless person, which I do a lot, is very, very beneficial. So that way the handler can focus on, again, the interactions with their dogs and the people they're with. Usually our visits are about an hour. The dogs get pretty tired after about an hour, so I may do one or more visits in a day. Some days we're busier, some days I'm not so much. I tell people my job is a part-time job, but it's full-time passion, and I feel that with all of my constituents here on the panel, that it's something that we're passionate about 24/7, even if we may not necessarily be doing it all the time. So sometimes our pet therapy visits are in the morning, they're in the afternoon, they're in the evening, depending on what I'm doing throughout that day. I'll also be reviewing documents, keeping up with our various paperwork, emails, phone calls to our site contacts, phone calls to our volunteers, phone calls to people who are interested, which all the time people are wanting to know about pet therapy and how they can be involved. And there's a lot of criteria that are involved in being a pet therapy team, including being registered, which takes a lot of my time explaining to people. And being a registered pet therapy team with either two organizations, for instance, are Delta Society, which is a global organization, and Therapy Dogs Inc., or TD Inc. And both of these organizations, all of our volunteers are registered with one or the other, and when they are volunteering with their dog, if a negative incident were to occur, Delta or TD Inc. provide, unless in the case of negligence, provides up to about $1 million of insurance. So it's a really important thing to have to be able to do what we do. All the facilities that we serve require registration. And liability is one of the biggest roadblocks to getting pet therapy into a facility. So that helps us out a lot. Let's see, some of the other things that I'll do, say, often in the afternoons, I'll go meet a new volunteer and their dog. A lot of times I've spoken quite a bit with people over the phone or via email, and they're all registered, they're ready to get started in pet therapy, and it's my job to meet them and, again, evaluate them and their dog just on a more casual basis about what locations might be appropriate for them to visit and what might be the best situation for them to get started, and guide them through the process of beginning to make pet therapy visits. And that's always really fun. We usually go to a dog park, and I will spend a lot of time loving on the dogs, seeing how they react. Again, they're evaluated by a certified Delta or TD Inc. evaluator, but as volunteer coordinator, it's also my job to get to know my volunteers and to know their dogs. And everybody who's on our roster, you say a dog's name or a person's name, I'll be able to match them up right away. And I can probably tell you the dog breed and whether they're a rescue or not. Lots of things. And I guess one of the things that I am so thankful for on a constant basis is the ability to multitask. Again, that 24/7 is always going in my head, and I'm looking at the next step of what I need to do, whether it's working on our newsletter or entering email contacts into our newsletter, or two newsletter things. But it's a lot of different things, but it's really fun, and every aspect of my job I greatly, greatly enjoy. So at a lot of times, I'm like, is this work? Am I really getting paid for this? Because this is amazing. Even down to the scheduling, which organizing people, that many people, for as many visits as we do about 120 visits a month. It's a lot, so, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. All right, Matt, follow up that act.
I don't even know if I should tell you what I'm doing. Well, obviously I'm an educator, and on average we educate probably 4 hours a day, but it seems like lately we spend 6 hours a day. And I think you'll hear it's a common theme. If you want to work in this field, you wear a lot of hats. I'll give you a good example. The other day I finished teaching a group of, I believe they were middle schoolers, and I took them on a stream investigation. We looked at macroinvertebrates, all the the insects that live underneath the rocks in the river, and talked about water quality. And I left that, and I had my elbow deep in wastewater, trying to manage our wastewater system because we're in the middle of the Pisgah National Forest, and we have such a high volume that we actually have to treat our own wastewater. So you wear lots of hats to make the system work. But tomorrow, tomorrow, I will be taking, I think, about 6 to 8 people along with some other coworkers, and we're going to teach them how to fly fish. So we'll be on the East Fork, which is just outside of Rosman, North Carolina, and we'll be fly fishing for 4 hours. When I get back from that, I'll have to check my email because I'm also on our strategic planning committee. The governor mandated that all state agencies come up with some sort of strategic plan, which is actually a pretty good idea, and we've put it off for a number of years. We've actually had a that's a fun word, strategic plan for a number of years, but we call it annual plans. But anyway, it's a 5-year plan. And so I have to, after I get back from that, check my email, make sure there's no messages, then hop in the car and drive to Raleigh. And at 8 o'clock the next morning, I'll have meetings all day. Wonderful. You know what's funny? 10 years ago, they wouldn't let me come anywhere near anything like this.
Really?
You ever notice it? When you get older, they make you do stuff that's a little bit more formal. It's the truth. They put you on these big committees, and they make you go to Raleigh and sit in boring meetings. And you don't get to play as much as you used to. That's a shame. But basically, yeah, I love my job on a daily basis because I don't grow up. I don't get to grow up. I play with little kids all day or play with adults. Shoot archery, shoot shotguns, rifle. Not at things, targets, stuff. Well, but ultimately, we are training folks to do that. So, anyway, pretty interesting day. Not as hectic as y'all's days. My hat's tipped to you for sure. Yeah.
And you're wearing it.
Do what?
Thanks. Allison?
Okay, a typical day for me, I'd have to deal with all the pets at home. There's 4 dogs, 4 cats, 3 tortoises that everybody wants to eat first thing, and handle that and then head over to work. Being the curator of a small facility, talk about wearing hats. There's a lot of hats there. First thing I do is check on everybody, make sure all the staff, make sure that nobody's sick or ill or has any limitations that day. Because if they are, then I'm going to be a keeper for that day. If they're not, then I'll get to devote some time to, desk work. There's a lot of that with my position right now. I'm in charge of the staff and the staff scheduling, ordering most of the supplies, paperwork involved with animals that we bring in or animals that might leave, paperwork involved with veterinary procedures. I'm also pretty involved with any construction that we have on site as far as exhibit design, and we're also going through strategic planning. So there's generally a meeting per day at least. And then one of the things that was sort of a surprise when I became a curator versus a keeper was how much attention I now have to pay to people. I'm just like, will you please get out of my face and stop whining? And now I have to deal with my staff and their time off and their requests and their needs. And I sometimes just want to go hide in one of the animal exhibits and let nobody find me for a while. So I'm learning to be a human manager now and an animal manager. But Yeah, we often have a pump that's not working. Oh, we don't have any medium rats. Oh, the otter has a cold. And I mean, some days I'm just spinning and the radio chimes, Allie, and I'm just like, what now? So multitasking is a big necessity. And in my area, I mean, I feel like I don't know enough. I feel like, I mean, I could learn forever because it's so variable. I mean, one problem has to do with animal behavior. The next problem has to do with the computer and our email. The next problem has to do with staffing and trying to figure out, like, 2 staff members aren't getting along and how to handle them. I need to get your number there. The next problem could be maintenance. As far as keepers go, we just hired a new keeper mostly for her ability to do maintenance. And I mean, that's kind of crazy. Obviously, she had good animal experience too, but she won out from the other candidate because she had maintenance experience. We're owned by the city, and they've got a hiring freeze, and our maintenance department is 2 people strong. And there's just always stuff falling apart, Wow. So that's actually huge is knowing how to work a skill saw and a hammer in our field. And that's in big zoos as well. I mean, we interviewed people from major zoos, and they had to get involved too. So there's a lot of that as well as the animal stuff. As far as having that moment where you're like, wow, I'm glad I know that. I don't really know. Probably behavior. That's at least the most enjoyable part of my day. Is recently the ed staff who takes care of our groundhog. She's Nibbles, the famous Nibbles. She's a little program groundhog. And he says, Nibbles is taking stuffing out of her bed and putting it in her litter box and sleeping there, and she's pooping in her bed, and she's never done that before. And so I'm like, well, maybe she's old, maybe her vision is going. Her litter box is more of a Buddha dome thing. Mm-hmm. I'm like, maybe we need to get her a Buddha thing for her bed to feel more secure, or maybe the wind's blowing a different way. And so we just had all these challenges to meet, and there's a lot of that every day. That's really, really neat, and I love taking on those challenges and trying to find out what those animals are going to need. Longest day I had recently was last week. I acquired 2 animals that I can't say what they are because they have to go through quarantine, and there'll be big fanfare sometime in the winter, so I can't say anymore, but it's really cool. They came in about midnight. My assistant curator flew out to get them, brought them back on a plane, picked them up from Atlanta, brought them in at midnight. I met her. We were, in a dark building, unscrewing them and making sure their needs were attended to and sitting with them, and then I crashed on her couch for 3 hours and got back to work to meet the vet so he could look them over and we could start the quarantine process. And today I was buying toys for him. So there's some really cool stuff. I don't mean to be negative Nancy. There's a lot of cool things. I think, as he was saying, you get older and they make you do boring stuff. I'm realizing the higher I get, the further I'm getting from the animals. That being said, I'm learning how to balance that, though. I've decided that I'm going to take a walk every day and just walk the zoo, and I think I might take off my uniform so I don't get stopped a lot. But just to walk and take it in and realize that I'm there, why I'm there, and just appreciate them. Because otherwise you can get really bogged down in the emails and paperwork and stuff like that.
Luckily you get to write your own schedules sometimes.
Unless somebody calls in sick or there's a sick animal.
So you get to make your own gigs.
No cubicles, no, doesn't sound very much like the kind of job that I think we have stereotyped in popular media. And there's a lot of themes here, and there's no boredom here.
Right.
No.
So
You're definitely all living your passion. Can you, maybe a few of you, comment on future trends of working with animals and career opportunities? Maybe a couple of you can speak to that. Kendall, did you have?
Sure. Well, I think animal-assisted psychotherapy is definitely something that's growing. So this is a good time to get involved in it, and anything where there's research supporting it. So anytime, and I have a list of website information if anyone's interested in things, but anytime when there's studies done, because everything in mental health is about evidence-based, and so there are some studies coming out about animal-assisted psychotherapy. So I think that's emerging. I don't know if you would say the same.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I'd say the use of animals as a modality in psychotherapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, in schools, in any kind of rehabilitation especially, is just burgeoning right now. And I think it's the future of mental health and physical health. I really do, of wellness actually in general. I think the more that we can bring people together with animals, we'll be alleviating some of Joelle's problems. We'll be bringing more places like Horse Sense and the Nature Center, bringing people together with animals. And we all, it's just really interesting. We all have a very similar goal in expanding people's understanding of what it is to work with animals, how amazing they are, and how they can relate to us. So in so many different fields, you can work with animals, especially like physical therapy. That's something I'd love to do someday, and use my dog as a modality for a rehabilitative session. It's way up here. It's my star. But I think there's a lot. It is brand new. It's awesome.
I was going to say, in the zoo world, in spite of the economy, zoos are still maintaining really high membership across the United States. I think especially because people are having those staycations that they're talking about, and they're kind of rediscovering their zoos and nature centers. And there's really a big push now for these institutions to become heavily involved with conservation. They call it ex situ conservation, where a zoo is doing in situ, in-house, but they're giving money or research or staff time towards ex situ conservation. A small institution like us, we don't get to do as much of it. We do get contacted a lot by universities that maybe want some stool samples or blood samples from our animals and things like that, and we participate. But some of the bigger zoos, I just went to the NC Zoo. They have amazing programs that they're taking part in Nairobi and Papua New Guinea and all these places, and most of them really start with people. I think they're realizing with conservation that you can go and try to create a protected area, but you have to start with the people that are going to encroach, and if they need to encroach on that land, they're going to, and so it's not going to help you to say it's protected and those animals are protected, and people are realizing you've got to start with local communities and get the conservation message out there, and zoos are really doing amazing things as far as that goes. So I think as far as in my field and people entering it, I think getting some conservation biology degree, extending it more towards those conservation initiatives, even learning some nonprofit skills to help with those programs that get started over there. I think that's kind of the way of the future as far as my industry, beyond obviously the keeping and there's exhibit design. I mean, there's a lot of ways as far as zoos are great in that they offer so many opportunities to be involved. I mean, just pick a passion, and your passion can be guest services, and you can still go and be a part of it because they just operate on so many levels. So,
Excellent. And do you have any final questions? I want to open it up to the students.
I want to open it for questions too, and I think Alison actually tipped on the thing that I want to hear from everyone who's been terrific enough to come here and get this amazing. What an amazing group of people! I'm so proud you're all here. So how do they get into it? Okay, and what do you want to know about how to get into it? Let's just go straight to. Do
you have any questions?
Break it down. Come on, step
Please,
forward. Let's go.
if you have a question, please step up to the microphone and say your name.
Hi, I'm Margaret Earthman. I graduated from UNCA this past May. And like all of you, I have the need and desire to work with animals and be outside of the office. I can't have an office job. But I noticed it's been a trend in what y'all have all talked about and what I've heard from a lot of other people, that working with animals in these types of organizations, the key is to work your way from the bottom up. It's, pretty much a hierarchy, a pecking order, and volunteering is the obvious way to get in at the bottom level and work your way up. And I do volunteer for an animal sanctuary at the time, now, and have for 3 years. But how do you maintain a full-time job to keep the roof over your head and get enough volunteer experience in with these organizations?
That's a good question.
Excellent question.
Who wants to talk about there?
Advice to break into the field.
This is bad advice, but I had to bartend. I had to make fast money at odd hours so that I could have my day free for volunteering. I mean, I'm not advocating going and being a bartender, but I had to find creative ways to keep the roof over my head because I knew that I just had to commit to the volunteering and the internships and do whatever it takes to do that, and pawned my pets off on my parents and saved my money and took off. So there will just have to be, I think there will be a decision that you make that you're like, I'm jumping in and I'll do what it takes. If not, it's going to go slower, in my opinion.
I can tell you also, don't always work for free.
Yeah.
Well, seriously, if you feel adamant about getting into this field is actually really broad. And while we were sitting before coming into this room and sort of discussing, they use animals for therapy and to protect animals and put them in better homes and better places. And I was looking at myself and I was like, holy cow, we kill animals. I mean, in all honesty, I work for a hunting and fishing organization, but we use harvesting as a management tool, and it's regulated, and we promote ethics and fair chase, and we really try to push for good decision making when you're out there. But it's a broad thing. And there's a lot of internships out there. There's a lot of state-funded programs that you can become a part of, where you can find ways. It may not be with that organization that you're volunteering with, but if you're really aggressive, you can find internships that pay. My wife says I'm so selfish, and she's right. I need to volunteer more of my time.
Yes.
But I know exactly. I do.
Volunteer version.
I do, and I need to. But if you really want to get your start in the field, try to find the money first.
I disagree with that.
Okay.
Most of our staff that we have hired have all been volunteers at first, with different backgrounds. I mean, some in vet tech school that just can work on Saturdays. Some, one was a Warren Wilson College student, and she started volunteering, just coming to walk dogs. Then we offered her a part-time job as kennel, just kennel worker, where she worked for maybe 20, 25 hours a week while she was at Warren Wilson. Then as soon as she graduated, she'd been there for almost a year, and we made her, our first paid volunteer coordinator. So, we've only been around a year or so. So, I mean, positions open up gradually, especially with like fledgling organizations. And even if you're volunteering with one organization, maybe you have one Saturday a month that you could get your foot in the door somewhere else. And, a lot of times with being with an organization long enough, you can create your own position, and funding pops up eventually. But even owning my own business, when I had just Pet Soup grooming and I did the Pet Soup rescue, I mean, there were plenty of weeks that I went without a paycheck so I could keep a roof over the foster dogs' heads, So it's all about, now I'm 37, so hopefully by one of these days I'll get paid a lot, but now it's still very bare minimum. But I just think volunteering is the way to get your foot in the door. And I think there's only 3 people there that have not volunteered their way into getting a full-time paid position. So.
But you will be hungry.
And I also think there's a part of it that you have to think about what you're willing to do with your life. So, like, are you willing to look for work anywhere? Are you willing to move? Are you, where are you at? What are you willing to risk? and doing a kind of big assessment of what you want and how to create it. So not making it as narrow as like, how do I have a full-time job and do this volunteer work so that I can get into the field that I want, but making it a little bit bigger about what do I really want to do and what am I willing to sacrifice in order to be in that kind of position.
Yeah, I think what Kendall just said is very important. What are you willing to do and to be in that situation? When I did my internship with PAWS, I had my very first administrative meeting with our executive director and our president and the current volunteer coordinator. And it was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. I sat there and looked at these 3 women and said, I want to do this. I want to be volunteer coordinator for this group someday. I don't care what it takes. And I just know this is absolutely what I want to do. And it wasn't until 3 years later, I had no idea it was actually going to happen, even though it was what I wanted. So I was researching schools and programs, when there's not that many, in animal-assisted interactions, trying to figure out how can I get an educational degree that will make it even possible for me to have a paid position in this field. What can I do? And I was really fortunate that I hadn't actually pursued any of those when this position came up, and I wanted it more than anything. It was all I thought about. I was very aggressive. I went up against several people that had masters and were much more qualified than I was, but the fact that I was so invested in our organization, I worked at a kennel for several years. I worked here at UNCA for 2 years and had a very, very busy job in health and wellness. But because it was my passion to volunteer, that was my reward time, my time for myself, and just whatever I could do to stay connected to PAWS and the organization and the people I was working with was the most important thing. And I think a lot of people that want to volunteer and start at that bottom level, and hopefully there is some room for a possible position in the future that, when you've earned your chops, people really can see the passion that you have about it, and they want to have someone that motivated and enthusiastic and who's willing to make whatever sacrifices are necessary to be in that situation. They want somebody like that on the bus. They want someone on really driving their mission and the purpose of what you're trying to do, especially with a nonprofit. So I would say go with your heart and do whatever you can to possibly support yourself educationally, financially, in getting there. And if you really, really want it, I'm serious. I never thought I would have this position. And I'm still so happy. And there's many other things I want to do with my life, many educational opportunities I want to pursue. But this is something I never thought I'd have, and you just got to want it really bad, more than anything. So whatever you want, go for it. Hardcore.
Thank you all very much. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Or did you have
No.
Bring
comments?
on the questions.
Any other questions
There are no bad ones.
about
Ideas are wonderful. They
internships?
grow, they shrink, they go sideways. Sometimes they're thrown away, sometimes they're
Perks of work.
Here we go.
Not perks of work. Come on, guys. That are great. Oh, we got one.
Kendall, you mentioned about your background with wilderness therapy. Could you tell me a little bit more about your education with that and
Sure.
the benefits of that compared to maybe like a more traditional therapy method?
Yeah. So I knew that I knew I wanted to work outside, so I started looking for wilderness therapy programs, and I wanted to get a PhD, and I really wanted to research it, and that didn't exist. And I happened to be living in Boulder, Colorado at the time, and I didn't realize it, but Naropa University had a wilderness therapy program, and it was one of 2. The other one is Prescott, where you kind of make your own, and that's in Arizona. So I was already living there, and it was like 2 days before the deadline for the application, so I did it. And my belief around how that is better than traditional therapy, is that the question?
Well, just the difference, or what maybe the assumed benefits of it
Sure.
as opposed to something.
Well, it's wildly different because you're in the wild. So, and wilderness therapy has a huge range of things. Some people take groups out for 2 weeks at a time. There's all sorts of programs. Aspen is a big program that has a lot of organizations in this part of North Carolina. There's Seuss, there's Four Seasons, there's all sorts of wilderness therapy programs. But then there's also people who do more things like what I do, where you have people and you might go on a hike for a session, or you might work with horses, or you might just incorporate the natural world in some way Some people work in an office, but they have a lot of plants, or they, bring out natural objects and utilize those. I mean, people do this in city parks. They decide to take people to the park for a session, and that kind of work I think is amazing because you're working with populations who have access to a bit of the natural world and they're never going there. So you take them to a park that's like 3 blocks from their house and you open up a whole new world for them. I think the benefits of it are that it takes people out of their usual pattern, and so there's that. It disrupts homeostasis, which we're always talking about in psychology. So you can't just be the way you always are because you're in a different environment and it's calling you to experience something differently. And there's all sorts of opportunity for metaphor in the natural world too. And it's also it has a physical effect on your body. And most of that is stress reduction, unless you're taking them out on some hardcore adventure, which has its own purpose. More?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions?
All right.
Come on up.
I guess first I'd just like to comment and say that it's really cool and really inspirational to hear all of you talk, and I think that what you do is great. But Allison, something that really chimed in with me when you were talking is how when you were little you wanted to be like Jane Goodall, and I really have a strong affinity for primates, and I actually have a picture of Jane Goodall and David Graybeard hanged in front of my desk. So when I'm doing that chemistry homework and I'm like about to give up,
Good for you.
I just keep going. So when I was reading about your field work with primates, I found that to be really interesting, and I was wondering how you got involved with that after you graduated, and if you had any advice into being able to have that kind of experience out in the wild.
Yeah, primate experience is kind of tough to go by. There's a lot of competition for it. I was pretty lucky in Savannah, where I was going to school. There was a small island that was associated with the Wildlife Conservation Society, and they had free-ranging lemurs on the island and that they were studying. And my anthropology teacher said, oh, you need to go speak with this guy and you can do a student internship. And so I got to follow around black and white rough lemurs, and they were supposed to be they were being considered to be released back into Madagascar, so that I was supposed to be recording all their wild behaviors. Most of the time they were in my lap trying to get in my backpack, which I secretly love, but I was like, oh no, go forage. But, so I got really lucky there, that there was something local. With my trip to Africa, it was something I found online that I researched that had a lot of credibility, and it was a paid experience. I don't think that you always have to do that. I think some of them are certainly more touristy than really scientifically grounded. But this one I got really lucky on, and it is very well respected, and I just got really lucky I was able to borrow the money. Are you familiar with the Wisconsin Primate Center, Primate InfoNet? I can give you it's Primate InfoNet, but I'll give you the website, but it lists all the experiences, or people list volunteer, internship, and paid experiences with primates, and it's fantastic. I still check it all the time because I'm just daydreaming about living in Kenya. But it's a great resource, and I with working with primates, I would recommend that perhaps if you can be willing to move or relocate, or take 6 months and go do something. I don't know what your situation is, but if I could go back, I would not have credit cards and not have pets, so that I could have done more of that. The things that ground you and keep you here are sometimes going to stand in your way if you're looking at field research.
Yeah, that's a tough call. I once saw Dr. Lucy Spellman speak, and I was totally starstruck when I got to meet her, but she said, I have no dog, no family, nothing, and it's 100%. So that's definitely something.
It's really hard.
And on a side note, were the lemurs successfully reintroduced?
Those weren't.
Okay,
no,
try
sad.
again.
Yeah,
Right.
they weren't ready, but yeah. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a question? Yeah.
Joelle, you mentioned you had some behavioral certifications. What organizations did you get those through?
The Animal Behavior College. It's actually I got it just to say that I was certified, because you kind of have to have some stuff under your belt to be like respected in certain situations. And it was an online course, but you have an internship, an externship, you have shelter work that you have to do. And since I kind of owned my own shelter at the time when I went through, it was very good for me. Then I've also gone to Best Friends and taken classes there, so it's basically just certifications through beginning dog behavior, intermediate dog behavior, advanced dog behavior. And I'll probably go back to Best Friends at least once every year for my entire life. There's also Pitbull Ed Camp, which is in San Francisco, that I'm on the waiting list to get into for next year. And it's just a week-long course, working with pit bulls, and it's basically helping people understand their dogs and their dog behavior, and that's the big kicker too. And it's that's one thing I'm very natural at, is understanding dog behavior, learning dog behavior. But it's harder for me to make people understand their dog's behavior and how to modify that.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge for me, because people are set in their ways. They're set in the flippin' dog whisperer, I mean, it's everybody watches a TV show and they think they're a dog trainer, and most accredited dog trainers, dog behaviorists aren't the biggest fan of Cesar Millan, although I do think that he's done a lot of great work for pit bulls. I know that he loves dogs. He just sees it a different way than a lot of people. So, but when he first came out, I was a big fan. I went to see him in Austin, Texas. That was years ago, when it first came out.
Yeah.
So, but you just have to take TV stuff with a grain of salt. But anyway, so that was basically it. I have, a certificate class from Kim Brophy, another certificate class from another trainer, but not any major educational certification.
Yeah, I've looked at the animal behavior online, whatever, the college online before.
It's actually, it was actually a good experience for me, and it's a good foundation to start with. And they provide you also with a lot of resources to start your own training business, to get in different animal behavior fields. So it was good. It gives you some people experience too, because I had to teach classes. I'm not really good at the teaching classes part. That's not what I like to do. So, but it gives you that experience as well.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Any final questions? No? Any final advice on how to break in the field or internships before we start networking?
Intern, volunteer, and impress the people that you intern and volunteer for. I think two of the major career breaks I got were one was for being very persistent when I wanted the job, calling every few days and talking more about my great attributes, and the other, this recent position I was recommended for by my former and current boss. He moved and sort of contacted me and told me this position was open, and I took it here, and the reason for that, I really wasn't very qualified, and he knows that, but I managed to impress him in my former place, and I just went above and beyond, and I know you guys are talking about this today, and I know it really doesn't involve my job, but I'd like to sit in and learn about it, and just jump in at every experience I could. So when you do volunteer at the shelter, maybe there's a need that they have that you're not currently supposed to address, but maybe you've got some good ideas, and you walk over and you say, hey, I was thinking about this, and I'm pretty good at making phone calls. Maybe I could call and try to do some fundraising for you. Whatever you think you can bring to the table so that they notice you more. I think that's my best advice.
Yeah, if I have any advice, it's every morning you wake up, do it intentionally, work really hard to keep it fresh, do it differently. And I know that's, it sounds really simple, but it's actually very easy to become complacent and to say things like, well, when I first started here, this is the way we did it, But try to keep it up in mind and listen. Listen to everybody, because everybody's got some wacky ideas.
I agree with listen. Listen to your mentors. They are not reinventing the wheel. They are telling you from experience how things are done, why things are done the way that they are done. And you get so many eager volunteers who don't listen to your like protocol or like, this is how we do it, this is why we do it. They think that they can do it this way. No, we don't like those volunteers. Just listen and, and learn. And you can learn so much by just listening to your mentors. That gets you in the door.
And my last thing would be that HorseSense is a resource for you all too. So this is a majestic 90-acre farm, and it's only 25 minutes from here. And we have a lot of things this fall that are like stress reduction activities. And I know that college is stressful. At least it was when I was in it. So definitely don't hesitate to get in touch if you want to participate in any of the stuff we have out there. And that's a way to learn more about, what working with horses can be like.
Just in regards to what Allison and Joelle just said as well about volunteering and internships, be as professional as possible. I know that you're volunteering and it's your given time, but the more professional you are, the more seriously you take that on and really identify with it as a passion, then people will recognize that. I keep starting off and then I'll forget. But also, if you really do want to have a career working with animals, look at what's out there and you can make it happen. You absolutely can build a niche for yourself, whether it's actually building a position within one of these organizations or striking out on your own. Pet therapy, for instance, is a pioneering field. We've got HorseSense, we've got Brother Wolf, we've got the Wildlife Center, we've got rehabilitation. It all comes together because of this animal-human bond that's again, is so incredible. But if you really want to work with animals, you will find a way to do it. And if that's what drives you, you will find a way to do it. So just don't stop hoping and don't stop trying, because it will happen for you if it's what you really are wanting to do, not just meant to do. I'm not a huge believer in destiny, not necessarily. I think you make your own destiny. You can definitely do that, so be strong. Also, anyone interested in volunteering with PAWS, let me know. We always are looking for volunteers as well, and I have to say college students are very enthusiastic and we have lots of energy, which you always need in a nonprofit organization or any of these organizations. And thank you guys so much for your time today.
I just have one little comment that I'd like to say toward, I can hardly go into any room of people without at least one, and here I know of at least two people that have adopted a dog from us. And that's like the most rewarding. Like, I haven't met her. I have met her because I did her adoption counselor evaluation. But yeah, so two people in this room have adopted a dog from us. And it's just the most amazing feeling to know that, I know that there are thousands of homeless pets out there, but that we made a difference in these two pets' lives and these two people's lives. So these pets have enriched these people's life as well. So cool.
It's very cool. I want to thank you all for, first of all, for choosing your career paths. You're definitely all following your passion, and I appreciate you sharing your passion with our students. And on a personal note, I'm very happy that you are all championing animals and people and living your life calling. I'd really admire you. And again, I appreciate you being here and sharing your knowledge and enthusiasm and just zest for life in your careers with our students. You're true role models. So thank you. Excellent. Yeah. And thank you, Ann Weber, for joining us. We still have time for networking. So for you folks who love the animals, we have a great panel up here. So maybe you want to inquire about internships or volunteer jobs or future trainings. They are staying here until 6 o'clock. I also have food, I believe. Thomas Ann stepped out. We have food in the hallway, refreshments for you folks. Also, before you leave, if you can complete the evaluations, they're a green form. And for follow-up, we gave you the background on all our speakers and their contact information. So I'm hoping your intention is to keep networking, keep being in the right place at the right time so you can open up doors to your own possibilities and career choices. If you need assistance with volunteer work, internships, navigating your career, know that you have access to the Career Center. We're in 259 Highsmith Union. We have walk-in hours every Wednesday and Thursday from 2 to 4 for quick questions. And you can also stop by and make an appointment with one of our career counselors. And then a final announcement, our annual Career and Graduate School Fair is scheduled on Tuesday, October 19th, and it'll be in Highsmith Union, so you can network with lots of different employers as well on that day. But thank you all for being here, and again, thank you, and let's start networking.